Good evening, everyone. The hour of 6 o'clock having arrived, I'd like to call this June workshop meeting of Borough Council to order. Thank you all for joining us virtually. This is another one of our attempts to do this, and we hope you find it informative. So we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you very much. Next item of business is the meeting minutes. And I move that council review and approve the May 6, 2020 workshop meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on, report from the Public Safety Committee. We've all seen the images from Minneapolis and around the country of unrest, and rightfully so. A lot of folks are angry and frustrated. The murder of George Floyd, which has been broadcast around the world, and other issues involving Black and brown citizens of this nation, and the fight for equality. While the police issue is a small part of it, we wanted to take an opportunity for you to hear from two of our officers, our police force, who put together a PowerPoint presentation. And the police department in Carlisle, it's 20% minority. The minority population of Carlisle is 11%. This is a progressive department that, along with civilian oversight involving the Human Relations Commission, civilians taking part in the hiring process, and just the overall community engagement of our department, makes Carlisle special. It's a special place. There's only 33 of them, so you know you have to be special to be a part of it. So we thought it would be wise and prudent to let them, in their own words, talk to citizens and council about policies that they have, and you will see that they are, some of the best that we have to offer. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Detective Sergeant Friedman and Sergeant Miller, who will proceed with a PowerPoint presentation. Gentlemen.
Okay. Good evening, and we appreciate everybody who has been able to attend this evening. Again, as was pointed out, we just wanted to be able to reach out to you from the police department and talk about some of the things that we are doing in our police department, your police department, to prepare our officers to make good decisions. And there's going to be times where we do have to respond to resistance, but we wanted you to know exactly what we're doing. Over the last several days, we've received many questions from concerned citizens. There's a lot of folks out there that are hurting, and we understand that. And our hearts are broken for you. Our hearts are broken for some of the things that are going on in this nation. And what we're going to try to do is go through some of the questions here, and by just explaining what our police department does, hopefully we'll cover a lot of the questions you have. But I do want to just kind of start out with one question that has been a prevailing question. We've had a lot of phone calls and emails and messages asking us if we are against police violence. And it's kind of a mind-boggling question for us, because you're talking to an agency here in Carlisle made up of professionals. So when we hear a question like that, we think, well, absolutely. We are entirely against police violence. We are entirely against police brutality. We stand firmly against that. Now, those of you that were waiting for the answer to that question, please don't just leave the meeting now. We'd like you to stick around, because we can say that. We can say that we're against it, but we really want to show you this evening, as we take your time here a little bit, we want to show you how we have put things in place to show you that we are against it. So if you look across the nation, there's roughly 750,000 law enforcement officers nationwide, uh, comprising probably 18,000 agencies. Those numbers change a little bit. But what we really want to point out to you is here in Pennsylvania, there's roughly 12,000 different law enforcement agencies. Out of those 12,000 agencies, there's about 117 that have achieved what's called accreditation. We happen to be one of those agencies. Now, accreditation is something that we are very proud of. It's a lot of work. We have regular inspections. We have to reach certain standards and policies and procedures and the way we do things to be able to maintain that accreditation and achieve that accreditation to begin with. So we're very proud of that. Out of 12,000 agencies, we're one of the 117 that have achieved that. Now, that may not mean a lot to some of you, because some of you may think, well, it's probably just law enforcement agencies patting other law enforcement agencies on the back. We've even heard that. But the PLEA Act, the organization that does it, I would argue that even by the fact that only 117 agencies out of 1,200 were able to achieve this, it's not easy. It is not easy to achieve. But your police department here in Carlisle has achieved that. And it is because of the good policies and the procedures that we have put in place and the standards that we maintain as an agency, not just with paperwork, but with the way we do things, our equipment, our training, the professionalism that we're able to show. We actually have to show proof of each compliant action. As we go through our policies and procedures, yes, we may have all the right paperwork together, but then as PLEA Act comes in and inspects us, they want to see that we are complying. They want to see examples for each one of those policies so we can show them how we are complying with everything from paperwork, again, to training, to documenting use of force, documenting evidence, all the different steps that they may be examining. There's a few hundred different bullet points that they're examining in us. And we have maintained that for several years now. We have actually achieved accreditation many years in a row. But that is, again, something we're proud of because it shows that your Carlisle Police Department is not just the average agency. We have standards that we have set and standards that we're living up to that are much higher than 99% of the other law enforcement agencies, even just in Pennsylvania. You know, this badge is more than just a symbol to us. Most of your police officers, we started off, again, most of them started off serving their country in a variety of different military services. We started off serving our country, and now we're here to serve this community. So when we look at this badge, we wear it with pride. We wear it not as a symbol of how we're better than anybody else or something that distances us from the population we serve. It is a reminder of who we are supposed to be. It's a reminder that we are out there serving the public. We are out there to protect. We are out there to help people. We're out there to make decisions on a regular basis throughout our days that hopefully contribute to the community rather than detract from the community.
Thanks, Dave. I'll take it from here. We're going to discuss one of the main points I wanted to express to everybody is that we need to find the right people for the job, and our policy doesn't start when the person is hired. It starts actually beforehand. We have a very diligent process to even get applicants into our department. We start with recruiting in an attempt to find the right person for the job. We've reached out to minorities and minority universities and colleges. We have advertising that goes out. We've done recruiting missions to colleges, police academies, universities to draw in the types of people that we are looking for, the perfect fit for our department. In fact, Chief Landis actually did a recruiting video here the last go around, and he equated it to, he's a Marine, so the few, the proud is his motto, and he's brought that to us also, to the Carlisle Police Department. Like we said, there's 33 of us, and we're very proud to be who we are, and you're darn lucky to get in and work with us because the standards are set high, and they should be high. So that's our mission, is to recruit people that can live up to those standards. The way we do that is, obviously, being a civil service, we have to have an exam. So we'll give a written exam along with a physical agility test. The physical agility test is set by state standards. We have a unique process with the written test We went with a company that uses questions that not only test cognitive ability, but also give us retrospective into their personality, their belief system, their decision-making abilities. And we use that because old tests that we had been using were just knowledge tests or memorization. And we didn't feel that was enough to show us who were the right people for this job. Once candidates get through the written part of the test, if they score high enough, they come in for an oral examination. And again, we've recently made some good changes to this process. We enlisted the help of a psychologist to write the questions for us. We sat down with leaders of the police department and told her what we were looking for, what we needed in good police officers. And she went through and helped us structure questions that would bring out the qualities of these people in the interview process. And that interview process is unique because of the civilian interaction that occurs. Not only are police officers interviewing these candidates, we had civilians also in the process with us. We had Professor Rojas from Shippensburg University was with us this last time, and Robert Susky from the U.S. War College was also in on the panel. And we find that is helpful to have outsiders also in on that process who are actually scoring these people and giving their opinion of their abilities. So once that process is over and we've reached who we think we have as the best through the written and through the oral parts, some are given conditional offers of employment and we go forward with a psychological examination. Very important part of the process. We send them to a doctor who has previous law enforcement experience, a professor up at Lebanon Valley College, and he has his own practice. So he's very versed in law enforcement issues and the things that are going to be needed for a good police officer. So we do that. And then as that's going on, the detectives and I will conduct a very thorough background check. And this just isn't a check into the person themselves. We do the standard criminal history, credit checks, that type of thing, but we're looking deeper than that. We go to neighbors, former employers, former classmates, teachers, social media. We dive into social media accounts, get onto the internet and find anything we can about this person that might be a problem for us. We've definitely found some problems and eliminated some people through these backgrounds. When they get through the background process, the final step prior to hiring, we make everybody submit to a polygraph test. This is a new procedure that came along with Chief Landis. It is a time-tested method to really get to the character of a person. And we feel that this is the way to finalize that background, to verify the information we found, and to try to catch anything that we could have missed. Now, even though we do all that work and we put so much time into the background, because like I said, these issues that we're dealing with today don't start in the academy or don't start on the street. It starts with the person themselves. And that is the biggest challenge in hiring, basically anywhere, but in law enforcement, one of the biggest challenges is that your pool of candidates is coming from the human race. So we have human beings that are inherently flawed and do make mistakes and have problems. And we know that, and that's everybody. So we have to continue to keep an eye on people as they're going through and learning the job from us. So we have an FTO program. We have a probationary period for about a year that we still are molding these people into what we need them to be, and also double checking to make sure no mistakes are being made. And if we can correct them, we are. And if we can't correct them, we're going to get rid of them because we need to make sure that they meet the standards of the department. We have a review process through the supervisors that keep track of every employee. Luckily, like we said, we have 33 officers. We're big enough to police the borough of Carlisle and small enough that we can keep track of each other. Co-workers can keep an eye on each other. The supervisors are able to watch over and make sure that everybody's doing all right, because, you know, at times the job itself can become stressful. We send people to evaluations and psychologists after a critical incident to make sure that they're okay, to make sure that they haven't been affected by these traumatic events, so that they are safe to come back to the street and work with us. So we'll talk a little bit here about the internal investigations complaint process that happens with the police department. And there are many ways that complaints can come into us. We'll start with the basic ones. Coworkers are free to and encouraged to complain about other coworkers when they see something wrong. Every officer, and I've actually in the last few days, I've told officers this: if you see something going wrong, if you see something bad happening, it is your duty to step in and stop it. No matter the rank of the officer, no matter where you are, that's your duty to do so. If the officer sees something that doesn't need to have immediate intervention, they can report that from their sergeant all the way up. They can walk into the chief's office and tell him. Supervisors can do the same thing to the chief. And then, of course, the citizens have a right to make a complaint about anything that they feel is wrong. We have an online form. We have a form in the front of the lobby, and the chief has an open door policy that anybody at any time can come into the station. He'll sit down with you, he will talk to you, and we will look into the problem. We don't ignore problems, we take them head on, and we solve them as quickly as we can. So if an investigation is needed, what happens is the investigation will come to me, and I'm the detective assigned to handle the investigation under Lieutenant Lashall, who supervises that investigation. Immediately notification is made to the borough manager and legal counsel to let them know, hey, we are looking into something, here's where we are right now. And step by step, we keep in touch with the borough manager and legal counsel. Once that investigation is done, and that investigation is run just as a criminal investigation would be run, evidence is collected, interviews are done, it would be handled just like a regular court case would be handled. If discipline is appropriate and the chief recommends that, again, that decision is passed up and discussed with legal counsel and the borough manager. And then we also have the ability, if we have an egregious violation, termination might be warranted or timely based on the history of the officer. And again, each step we're talking to the borough manager, legal counsel, and the Civil Service Commission to make sure that we are on the right track of what should be done. Okay, Steph.
Sergeant Freeman, I'm going to jump in there just to underscore a point you made about the civilian oversight through the borough manager's office, which is something that has changed significantly since home rule went to effect. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the products, I think the benefits of home rule, that it's provided this extra civilian direct oversight.
There's constant communication. There are times that we're seeking guidance. Sometimes we're just passing on information, but there's always a good communication between the two offices, yes.
So then we get to the new officers. As the new officers come in, typically they are coming from the police academy. We are very aware of the standards at the police academy. Several of us are instructors at the police academy. So we know what is being taught there. We know how they can only do it with a broad brush up there because they're working with officers that are going to go to all different agencies around. So one of the first things we do when we get a new officer in from the academy is we have a talk with them about, okay, these are all the things you learned at the academy, but now we're going to set you up to be an officer here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, because we are not just any agency. We can't control what other agencies are doing out there, but we can control what's happening here in Carlisle with our police officers. So we let them know we raise the bar. We raise the bar from the time they leave the academy. We want to see the best quality out of them. And that starts with the field training. We have a robust field training program. It is 16 weeks long, and we're constantly revamping that training program, just like a lot of other things we do. I touched on PLEAC earlier. Everything we do, we are always aware of any changes that are going on nationwide, any new research that's out there, any new information that would indicate we need to revise things, any new information that would indicate that maybe we have been doing things well, but we can do it even better. We're constantly trying to revamp things. And our field training is no different. So we have a 16-week program where they are teamed up with a field training officer. During that time, they actually, it's set dates, they actually rotate to different field training officers. So that way, throughout that 16-week period, they may actually work with 4 different field trainers so that they can get a variety of the expertise that comes from the education, training, and experience of those different field training officers. Then that program is actually overseen by two sergeants, as a matter of fact, who help organize things, make sure all the paperwork is being done properly, make sure all aspects of the training program are efficient and up to the standards that we expect. And during that field training program, there's a lot of oversight on that trainee. Every single day they are evaluated. Every single day there's a written document completed at the end of their shift talking about things they did well, things they didn't do so well, things that they're going to get some extra training on. And sometimes it is something that may rise to the level where we're going to have to just put the brakes on a little bit and say, okay, you know, we've had some heart-to-heart talks with people sometimes in the field training program. We'll be able to go and say, okay, you did this. We're not going to tolerate that. You are starting to show signs that you're going down the wrong road, and we're not going to tolerate that here in Carlisle. You can be replaced. We make it that simple. That they can be replaced if they're going to go in a direction that we are not happy with and that we don't want to see out of our officers here in the Carlisle Police Department. We are trying to mold them to what the community expects of us here and what the chief expects out of his officers. We are integrating them into the police department, but also integrating them into the community. We are letting them know that they are going to be part of this community. Hopefully everything goes well and they do a great job, hopefully for the next 25 years or so. We want them to be a contributing part of the community. So we're trying to get that started right off the bat, get them on the right foot and set them up for success rather than failure, because we don't want them out there making mistakes, representing the police department, creating fear, creating any unnecessary stress whenever we're supposed to be the people out there helping people get through those stressful times. And we also take it very seriously that we're training up future leaders. We have a brand new officer right now, just started last week. We're already training him as a leader, because we know if things go well for him, he is going to be someday a leader in this police department. So we want to, again, get him off on the right foot. So we already have started talking to him about some of the things that go into leading officers and some of the responsibilities in making decisions. Because ultimately, every police officer, while we're out there too, we are a leader in the community. You know, when we're dealing with the public, it's not fair for the public to get less quality out of an officer just because they don't have as much time on the street as maybe the old guys like Sergeant Friedman and I. So we want them to have the skill set to be able to go out there and handle situations with the right mindset.
I'll jump off the script here a little bit because I'm looking back at what we discussed on the internal investigations. And I just wanted to, it's not on the slide, but I wanted to mention that there are performance evaluations done on a twice a year basis. Every 6 months, we're looking at officers. The sergeants are actually getting with the corporals and evaluating the officers. So this doesn't stop with new officers. Your entire career, you are getting evaluated every 6 months by your leaders. And when deficiencies are noted, they are put on the evaluation and they will be corrected by the next time, or, you know, disciplinary matters will be then taken. So I just wanted to add that, since we didn't discuss that, throughout your entire career, you know, just because you got off FDO and just because you're off probation, you're not off the hook. Every 6 months, you are coming into the sergeant's office and you're facing the things you've done well, you're facing the things you've done wrong. And, you know, if training is needed, we will get you to training. If discipline is needed, you're going to be disciplined. But I just wanted to express that also because we did forget to put that on the slide. Sorry, Sergeant Miller, back to you.
So again, we're bringing these folks in, these new officers, with just the understanding that we have high expectations from them. And they are joining a police department that overall we have high standards and high expectations of all of our officers. We focus a whole lot on training. There's many agencies out there that they wish they could conduct the amount of training that we do, because we're kind of known to do a lot of training. There is an organization that oversees police officer certification in Pennsylvania. It's called the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission. And they set a lot of guidelines out there. They maintain, again, the certifications for all of us police officers in Pennsylvania. They require 16 hours minimum of training per year. We in the Carlisle Police Department feel like that is not even a place to start. We actually are probably the lowest number of hours one of our officers will get in a year is more like 80. And then of course it goes up from there, because we take training very seriously. It is not uncommon to, every single week, it's not uncommon to have an officer somewhere. They're either attending a training at another location, Maybe they're out getting instructor certification so that they can come back and train the rest of the officers. Maybe we're ramping up a training in-house where we have one of our own in-house instructors. We have a lot of different officers that are proficient as instructors in many different specialties. So maybe we're lining up our own training in-house, and we'll rotate the department through in some type of logical method so that everybody gets that training. Sometimes we have officers doing online training for different certifications. We have right now, even with the restrictions with COVID, we have our officers going on the FEMA sites and the FEMA sites and many other sites out there taking online courses. They're taking advantage of the fact that, for right now, we really can't go many places. So we're continuing our training. We just revamped it a little bit, but we're continuing our training because we take training very seriously. We know that we can talk all day. We can have all kinds of procedures in place, and we can have all kinds of demands placed on our officers. But if we are not training them to effectively go out there and do the job that's expected of them, it's a failure on our part. So we take it very seriously from the top down. We want to mold their overall decision making, because when officers are out there, they're making decisions. That's the number one thing that they're doing, is making decisions out there. And sometimes, as you know, sometimes those are life and death decisions. But we want them to be equipped to be able to make the right decisions. We want them to have proficiency with all their different equipment. I'll touch on equipment a little bit more in the next slide, but we don't want to just hand them all the cool things that are out there and say, here, have fun with this. We want to take the time to make sure that they're proficient with it and that they know when to use it, how to use it. We want to make sure that they understand all the different tools that they have at their disposal to be able to handle an incident. And of course, we want to focus a whole lot on interpersonal skills. We're dealing with people. That's our product out there. Our officers are people, and the folks in the community, they're people. So the interpersonal skills are so important. And we have officers that have natural talent. They can just speak. They can really click with anybody. And then we have folks that maybe need a little more training in that. And we have everything in between. But we focus a lot of time on trying to train up the emotional intelligence. We try to look at bias. We've had a lot of questions here over the last few weeks about how we train related to racial bias. And I just want to address that a little bit. Again, that's kind of like the question about our how do we feel about excessive force. We look at bias as something that has to be addressed with every training. We've had a lot of people say, how many times a year do you train about bias? And honestly, it would be difficult to count because we have integrated it. It's not just a class that we attend. It's not just, every few months we have a speaker come in and talk to us about bias. This is something that we integrate in all of our training because it has to be part of our everyday decision making. It's not just a checkbox that we can say, hey, yes, we had a class in racial bias. Because we understand it's so much more than that. It's so much more than even just racial bias. You can have an officer being a human being, and the human beings that we're dealing with on the street, bias can come in all different forms. It could be against somebody's race. It could be against somebody's ethnicity, age. It could be just age being, older people or down to children. It could be about special needs. There's all kinds of different bias that could exist on both sides. So we honestly address that, and we honestly train the officers to look at themselves so they can understand anything that is a stumbling block to how they are contributing to the community and how they are connecting with people. We need officers to understand, and we train them to understand the empathy that they have to have with the folks that we're dealing with out there. Because as you know, when people call us, a lot of times it's their worst day. So we train our officers to understand that particular event might be the worst thing going on in that person's life. Or if somebody else called us about that person, they may be struggling with who knows what. It could be emotional distress. It could be mental illness. It could be any number of different things that person's struggling with. And so the officer needs to have that awareness that they're dealing with human beings and that they can make decisions to properly serve those folks and to not escalate a situation, but to do exactly the opposite. Just be able to just step back and understand everything that's happening and make the right decisions based on that. And we want to show people respect. Everybody wants to be respected. We want to be respected. The people we're dealing with want to be respected. And until we have that empathy as we're dealing with folks, and until we can encourage empathy on both sides, it's very challenging to have mutual respect. So we cannot properly serve if we're not out there showing people respect. So I touched on all the different tools that we have. We have a lot of different tools. We have spent a considerable amount of time and money over the years to make sure we're doing research to find the best tools out there. We give our officers all the best equipment. Quite frankly, we can't carry anything else with us. We have so many things on our belt. We have so many things in our cars. We have all the latest tools that are out there. But again, we need to teach our officers to be proficient with them. We need to teach our officers to make use of the latest technology and the latest options that they have, because their situations are rapidly evolving, situations are dynamic, and so we need a lot of different choices. If you just go to a scene with one tool, well, that's the only tool you have to use. So we want to be able to equip them and then train them to be able to make their decisions based off of all their different options that they might have. But of course, the very most important skill that they have is using their brain. So we are trying to mature their brains into understanding, again, that what it's like to empathize with people and the need to empathize with people, and understand how to slow down a situation. We had a lot of questions about de-escalation. And that, again, that's another one. We can't just say, as a department, we would be remiss if we just told you, oh, well, we do de-escalation training once a year. That would be irrational. As far as we're concerned, that's not the way a police department should function, in our belief. So in the Carlisle Police Department, we engage in de-escalation training in every aspect of training. Every month, every week, as officers are going through training, we are incorporating de-escalation techniques into that, to the point where the officers, they don't even think about the word de-escalation, because it's just part of their thinking. They know to take steps that others would call de-escalation. We just call it handling a scene. We know that as we approach a scene, the different things that we are supposed to start evaluating to determine if we can calm things down, or more accurately, create a situation where the person we're dealing with is given that opportunity to calm things down. Now, don't get me wrong. We're police officers. Sometimes we go to things that are entirely out of control, and we may not have the options at the time to be able to step back, depending on what's happening. If somebody is actively in danger, we may not have the opportunity to step back right away. But as soon as we possibly can, as soon as we can take and make an effort to allow the people involved calm down a little bit, or to be able to rethink what they're doing, or to be able to reevaluate what all is happening, we take those opportunities. One of the things I wanted to touch base on too is just our body cameras. We had a lot of questions about body cameras, and we've had cameras. Again, that's just part of our agency. We've had cameras in our cars since probably about 1999, and then almost 3 years ago, whenever there was a federal grant program assisting agencies in purchasing the body camera system, we jumped into that. So we've had our body cameras now for almost 3 years. We didn't have any pushback at all from the officers. In fact, the only time-consuming thing in even obtaining them, because you can't just run out and buy them, we had to make sure that we had the right policies in place, because it's like any other tool. We want to make sure that it's used properly. We want to make sure that the evidence is secure. We want to make sure that we are not violating anyone's rights with the body cameras. So all of that was taken into account as we entered into that program. And we do use them on a regular basis. We had some questions about, are they on all the time? It's kind of difficult to answer that. The camera is on whenever an officer is engaging with the public. Obviously, officers have privacy too, so whenever they're at the station or something, the camera is turned off. But whenever an officer is out engaging with the public, they have it on. It's part of our policy. There are certain places where we would not have it on to protect the privacy of others. There's certain federal restrictions and there's certain state restrictions. Things like a nursing home. If we're in a nursing home for a call, we're not going to have the body camera on, because that would be a violation of the rights of everybody that we're around in there. But otherwise, the officer, I know that there was some concern out there of officers having the discretion to turn their body cameras on or off. Well, they don't have that discretion. They're very aware of when they are supposed to have their body cameras on, and that is when they're dealing with the public, and if it's not in violation of anyone else's rights. And we have checks and balances in place to make sure that the body cameras are being used in the right way, just the same as any other tool. Which brings me to the slide here. And we talk about a continuum. This is often called a use of force continuum. Sometimes it's called, sometimes they make it a circle, but more often than not, it's a resistance continuum. So what we talk about is the ways that officers can choose to go up and down this ladder, this continuum, based on what is being presented to them. So of course, as you notice, officer presence is number one. We realize that our mere presence at a scene can escalate or de-escalate things depending on what's happening. We train our officers to recognize that. And then it goes on down. I won't go through every single step there, but it goes on down the whole way down to deadly force. There's many, many different steps in between that an officer has to be able to evaluate, what is happening, what are they faced with, who is in danger, if anyone. They have to be able to evaluate what steps they're going to take, and they also have to constantly reevaluate. There's instances where an officer may need to use hard, empty hand control to get control of a situation, but then as soon as the person is in custody, as soon as handcuffs are put on, it's the officer's responsibility then to back off and to be able to move back on the continuum and realize, okay, we've gotten things under control right now, so now we're just going to take a breath, we're going to take a step back here, and we're going to continue on, because we understand, and we're training our officers to understand, that an arrest, as an example, is a process. We are not out there to punish people. We are not out there acting as the judges. That's not what we're for. We are part of a process in protecting society whenever we're making an arrest. So it's not our responsibility to be able to determine if somebody is needing to be hurt or anything like that. That's horrible. And again, it goes back to my very first statements. We are training our officers to take their responsibility very seriously and to take force very seriously and understand the effects it can have on them, the person they're dealing with, the public. It is not something to be taken lightly. So we do an extensive amount of training. And again, as I alluded to earlier, we incorporate the bias training, we incorporate the de-escalation training, we incorporate everything else that we possibly can into that force training, because we need our officers to make good decisions at all different levels, at all different types of calls, dealing with all different types of people. And you may have seen kind of, hopefully, if we've been successful, you've seen kind of a pattern here. What we're trying to show you is in the Carlisle Police Department, we are trying to maintain a certain culture. We are trying to have a culture of professionalism and a culture that is built on the right leadership. We have, throughout the years, we've always been an agency that really had good equipment and good training, but there is no doubt that Chief Landis, his focus is really on having the entire agency on the same page and having the right leadership in place to be able to make sure that all the different steps are followed and that there's a lot of oversight. When we talk about the force, something that we also received many questions about was use of force reporting. So we have professional practices in place for something like use of force reporting. Just to use an example, if an officer out there in the street right now had to use force on someone, they would, again, based on their training, their education, the policies and procedures, the tools that they have, we train them to make the right decisions using that force. Well, whenever the incident is all cleared, they have to document that force. They document the force, it goes to their supervisor. The supervisor then evaluates the force that officer used, evaluates whether the right decisions were made or the wrong decisions were made, or maybe it's just a matter of tweaking things a little bit. Maybe we can just remind an officer, hey, don't forget about this. Don't forget to use this. Don't forget to report this to the other officers there with you, things like that. But sometimes retraining is part of the process. Sometimes it is just a matter of just talking to the officer right there and just making sure they understand what happened. As that process goes, then the supervisor does a letter that accompanies the officer's original use of force report, and it would come to me. So then I look at it, and I look at it with a critical eye. I make sure that the officer all of their actions were in compliance with our policies and procedures, that they are maintaining the high professional standards that we have in this police department. And then I will make decisions. Okay, do I need to talk to the supervisor, their supervisor, about this? Or do I need to bring the whole squad in to talk to them? Does this require agency retraining? Is there new information or new research out there showing that, hey, maybe we're not doing this right anymore because now there's new information? So now we'll take an incident and retrain everyone based off of that incident to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all moving forward with professional practices and what's often referred to as best practices in different industries. But we're always monitoring those things to make sure that we're moving forward and maintaining the professionalism that all of you should be able to expect from us. And again, going back to that PLEAC certification, I'm sorry, I got off track there with that. The process then, after I am done with the use of force report, it will move up to the lieutenant. The lieutenant will look at it with the same critical eye. And then if he approves of it, he will move it on to the chief. If he doesn't approve on it, it'll get pushed back down again. And again, we'll address any issues. But ultimately, it ends up with the chief, and the chief has his idea of how the department should run and maintain professional standards. So he'll look at it and make sure everything was done in a way that is acceptable to him. And then all of that is kept as documentation then. And body camera footage, everything else, anything related to the scene at all, pictures, other statements from other officers, statements from witnesses, that is all kept. We maintain those records because, again, we want to make sure that we are learning. We are learning from anything that's going on out there, and we are learning from our mistakes. We're learning from the mistakes of others, and we're learning how to continue to do things in the right way. As part of that PLEAC certification, we are monitored for that also in PLEAC. PLEAC, because of the importance that use of force has in police departments, part of the oversight that they have on us is they have a lot of questions that they ask us when they come in to do their inspections. They have a lot of questions related to use of force. We have to show that we are following our own correct procedures. We have to show that we have the different training in place, the different equipment in place to make sure that the officers are making the right decisions and being provided what they need to be able to make the right decisions. And overall, within the agency, we make sure everybody understands the mission and the goals. We make sure that everybody is on the same page for the product that we are supposed to be delivering to the public. We don't take that lightly. A lot of the different things that have drawn national attention out there, those are things that we also shake our head at. There was another officer and I were just talking just a few hours ago, and he said something that we often share within the police department is nobody hates a bad police officer more than us good police officers. Nobody. Whenever there is a police action somewhere in the nation that is wrong, that is just woefully wrong based on inadequate training or bad attitude or anything like that, we all suffer because of it, and we hate to see it because it does not represent what we want in our profession. It does not represent what we want out of our officers here in the Carlisle Police Department. It does not represent the high standards that we set to be able to properly serve the public here in your community. So we have discipline in place. We have discipline. Sergeant Freeman talked about it earlier. There is a very specific discipline process, and it's not taken lightly. And officers know if they have maybe made a decision that was not in compliance with the way we want things to go in the police department, then they're going to have to get retrained. They're going to have some type of discipline related to that, based on everything that was taken into account for that. And again, we train up our leaders. The leadership in the police department is something that you just cannot take for granted. And I know that it's something we spend a lot of money on and a lot of time on, is training up our leaders to make sure that they are equipped to be able to look at their men and women and understand the needs that they have, understand the training that they will need, understand how to handle all different situations, because we have to be prepared for anything that comes. We can't, when you call, we can't tell you, yeah, we don't know how to handle that. We need to be able to give answers. We need to be able to handle situations in a way that properly serves the community. So we spend a lot of effort on training up our leaders and making sure that they're in the right mindset and they are equipped to be able to make sure their officers are in the right mindset and equipped to do their jobs. We've covered a whole lot of things. I'm going to hand it, I think I'm handing it back over to Mayor Scott. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen. You'd think I'd learned to unmute my mic before I start talking. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your presentation. We've had, Detective Sergeant Friedman has been diligently answering questions in the Zoom chat. But we do have two questions actually from Rebecca Schreiber. One deals with, I guess it would be LGBTQ citizens, and if they're having a negative experience with the Carlisle PD, is there a place where complaints are can be transparently presented for public review? Anybody want to answer that one? As far as if someone files a complaint?
I guess the complaint can come directly through the complaint process, as any complaint does,
Okay.
through us, or we have the Human Relations Commission that they can also go to. I can assure people the transparency will exist
Okay.
with us. Or if you're not comfortable with that, you can certainly go to the Borough or the Human Relations Commission and do it that way. It will still be thoroughly investigated.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Our officers also have the training on that, but obviously if somebody's feeling that they've been treated improperly, certainly come forward and we will discuss and deal with it.
Okay.
I think that the question was trying to address something different than that. Actually, yeah, I think it wasn't. Yeah, I think it was just the way we presented the question. It's whether the reports then are publicly available, and I was curious about this, so I looked into what different state laws are throughout the country. Pennsylvania is not one of those that requires those reports to be publicly available. I think there are about 12 states that do require them. Other states, and some of those 12 states only require them where they've been substantiated. The question then should be, although they're not required to be publicly available by the state, should we require them to be publicly available? And that's a legal liability question that we'll have to take a look at.
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Sean. Next question also from Rebecca Schreiber. How does the department ensure that the body cameras are turned on at required times? If a camera is turned off and an incident occurs, even if the officer is reprimanded for that incident, the damage may have already been done.
I'll take that. So it's a very good question. We have procedures in place to be able to verify that the officer did have their camera on. But like you said, if it wasn't on, what could we do? There are most instances, not all, but many instances will have multiple officers at a scene. So if 2, 3, 4 officers at a scene for some reason, the other cameras would still document the activity. They would still have the evidence. And of course, we would address with that officer the fact that their camera was off. There might be some retraining needed for that. We do have instances where maybe something is rapidly evolving, so an officer doesn't have a chance to turn on their camera because maybe as soon as they're getting out of their car, something is happening. So what we have purposely done is we wear Taser. It's now known as Axon. We wear Axon cameras. They have a few different things in place that we were able to invest in that also help. So one thing is, as we're riding to a scene, if it's an emergency, when we turn on our emergency lights in our cars, the car camera turns on, but it also activates our body camera. So that way the officer doesn't even have to think about the fact that their body camera needs to be turned on. They'll actually feel it start to vibrate and beep for them to let them know that it's already on. We've also gone to a system where our tasers, as soon as you turn on a taser, not activated taser, not actually taser anybody, but even as soon as we turn it on, we draw it from our holster and it turns on, it activates our camera. So we've invested in a couple extra systems there just to have some little extra help, for lack of a better term, to be able to either remind officers to turn on their camera or do it for them so that we're less likely to have those instances where there was not a camera turned on. Now, again, human beings being human beings, if it was a quiet call, they did not respond there with emergency lighting. They did not use their taser or draw their taser. So their camera did not activate. They forgot to activate their camera. I can't say that those things will not happen, but what we will do is we will watch for any type of patterns. I mean, that's, again, the professional standards in our department. If an officer does that, they're going to get reminded. They're going to get talked to by their supervisor. They'll be reminded about it. But we watch for any types of patterns in our behavior. One of the reasons we have so much time and effort invested in our leadership is so that they can watch for patterns of behavior. It is not a secret at all. If you look at some of the incidents out there that have drawn national attention, it is not a secret at all that some of those officers had a history of bad behavior. And so we monitor all that closely. We do not have just rogue officers out doing their own thing unsupervised. We know that a police department cannot properly function in a community and serve the people that we need to with a system like that. So we will watch to make sure that there is not a pattern of behavior where an officer is having issues, and we'll address it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and just real quickly, just in the recent past, we did have, it does happen, human beings being what they are, you do forget at times. And we had an incident where some cameras did not get turned on. And like Sergeant Miller said, we had coverage from other officers, but these officers still didn't have their cameras on. And they were, that was investigated, and using progressive discipline, we have documented those occurrences to make sure that we are keeping track of those types of events. Do not believe that any of it's done purposely. It's just one of those things that, like, as you're jumping out of the car and, it doesn't happen, but we make sure that that is documented to evaluate the pattern of the mismanagement of the cameras.
I'd like to ask.
Thank you. Those are very thorough answers. This has been a great deep dive. Everything I always wanted to know about policing, but we're afraid to ask. So I thank you both again. We'll just go down, ask for comments.
Real follow-up, talking about body cameras.
Yes.
Can you speak real quickly, Sergeant Miller, about whether you're able to use body camera footage to actually do training, to reevaluate a situation, to do like de-escalation, verification? Because it seems like it's a unique opportunity to do some really effective training. Can you speak to that?
I'd like to answer that. Now, we caught you a few seconds into your question, but if I heard enough of it, you were talking about how we can use the video from the body cams to actually do training. And actually, that is a fantastic source that we use. There have been many different times where officers will, especially the rapidly evolving incidents, will get back to the station after everything is calmed down. The supervisor will pull up the videos. Everybody's body cameras download automatically back to the station. I may have failed to mention that earlier, that everything is automatically downloaded whenever we get back to the station, and we plug everything in. But and officers don't have any ability to manipulate that at all. I know that was a question somebody had. An officer has no ability to manipulate their video whatsoever. They don't have those kind of clearances in it. But we'll download the video, and we'll be able to actually do some roll call training with the officers. We'll be able to sit down and talk. And sometimes it's just a matter of, I have to admit, sometimes it's humorous as long as everything is safe and nobody was injured. And sometimes you'll see an officer that tripped on something or something like that. So they take a little ribbing over that. But we've had body cams that have fallen off during foot chases and things. But so we have those funny stories every once in a while. But we were able to look at the body camera footage and really glean from it what is happening. We're able to see how the officers interacted with the folks at the scene. We're able to hear what they're saying, the way they're saying it, because of course, professionalism is all about the way we do things. So we were able to see not just how, but the way that they're doing things. And we're able to examine, okay, was everything done in a fantastic way, or do we need to do some retraining here? Is there anything that needs to be talked about? And quite often, again, we're trying to set up a culture in our agency where officers are critical of themselves also. And so that is extremely important. We teach our officers to be able to look at themselves and understand if they are lacking in something. And quite often we'll have officers come to me and say, hey, Sarge, I would like to get to this type of training. And we try to make that happen because they understand that maybe that's a weakness in themselves. And it could be a proficiency thing with equipment, but quite often it's also, they want to learn how to talk to people with special needs, or they want to learn how to do better evaluation of people that are under the influence of drugs or alcohol or things like that. So we're able to use, again, that body camera footage like you alluded to. We're able to use that for so many different aspects of our job, and understand if we're providing the right quality of service. We have had instances where people have come in and thanked us for the way an incident was handled. And maybe it was just an officer talking to someone about their lost dog or something like that. Maybe it was, what most people would consider a benign call. But we'll have people come in and say what a great job the officer did. Well, we'll be able to pull up the video and watch what they did. And that's good too, because it's not always about scolding the officers. It's not always about disciplining them. It's about rewarding them and understanding when they're doing good work. So we'll use the body camera footage to be able to identify when our officers are doing a great job, which most of the time they are. So we're able to look at that and see proof of it, and proudly give them awards. Sometimes the chief has different ways of rewarding the officers with coins and things like that, and he'll take those opportunities to just thank the officers for doing a good job. But it all came back to sometimes being able to view that body cam footage.
If I may, I'd just like to add that essentially, I know that whenever an incident occurs in the Borough of Carlisle and the chief contacts me, many occasions, the chief will contact me, and I will go over and I'll meet with leadership, Sergeant Miller, Detective Sergeant Friedman, the chief, lieutenant, and we review body camera footage with, post-event. So it's very beneficial, and provides us a very good snapshot as far as what the officers have done right, areas that could be improved upon, and so it certainly is a wonderful tool for us.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Hicks. Moving on with council, Deputy Mayor, any comments?
Just to piggyback on what the borough manager just said too, I think sometimes what gets lost is that these disciplinary issues or personnel issues that due to their nature are dealt with also by borough council, and borough council is informed in executive sessions that are necessarily not public, but there's that, there's that civilian elected body that is also reviewing and keeping apprised of these situations.
Yes, as most people know, under home rule, the chief of police reports now to the borough manager. The chief and I can assure you, we are in constant communication throughout the day, even on the weekends. I have a very clear line of communication with his leadership, and so it's been seamless with respect to home rule and the charge, and I take it extremely seriously. I know the chief does as well. I know that he has the right people in the key positions of leadership. And again, we take it very seriously, our charge. And I report out to the 7-member council that is elected at large by the people of this community. And we take it very seriously that we answer to every one of you. And I can assure you that we do everything in our power to empower our rank and file. And as Sergeant Miller stated, we start building leaders immediately. We have individuals that have just started with the Carlisle Police Department. We have to have sound succession planning in place. And again, the training that these individuals, these men and women are receiving, I can assure you that in the last 3 years since Chief Landis has taken over as far as the chief of police for Carlisle, that we have elevated training to a very new level that I haven't seen before. I know that the council is very supportive of training, not only in the uniformed, but also non-uniformed. So training is one of those areas that is a key objective for the Borough of Carlisle.
No, I'll jump back in because I wanted to make that point, but I also have some thoughts generally, and I'm not sure if I'll have the opportunity to address them as this goes on, and maybe we bounce around with other questions. But one, thank you, sergeants, and a thank you to the chief who couldn't be here tonight because he was actually in another jurisdiction helping with their interview process to make sure that another municipality has a sound process as they hire officers. And I want to thank the mayor for presiding over this opportunity to discuss this critical issue in light of the yet again elevated call to examine the intersection of race and the criminal justice system, and to seek an understanding of how our police department operates while continuously seeking ways to improve what we do as a government and as a community. This is not an easy subject. We don't want to lose the forest for the trees. The tragedies we have seen caused by malignancies in our system of law enforcement and criminal justice throughout this country are part of a larger conversation and reconciliation that must happen if we are to live up to the aspirational American ideals and liberties we hold dear and so often express in universal terms. Unfortunately, those ideals and liberties are not universal and uniform in their application. But law enforcement is but the tip of the spear. We need law enforcement to protect us and make space for the exercise of our liberties. Although we have focused this evening on law enforcement policies and practices, there is a broader issue with which we must grapple as a society, and that is the pervasive socialization of racism throughout the American culture, and particularly, as uncomfortable as this is, white American culture. We live on a continuum of racism, and for me to ignore the socialization that affects me like all others would be to miss that first crucial step of introspection in this conversation. I would miss how insidious racism is and how we can allow it to manifest in each of us in very subtle, passive, and unconscious ways. We all, myself included, must keep learning and growing. And a friend of mine recently reminded me how important it is that we have these discussions and make our connections when the water is high. The tide is low in America right now. I hope we can use a rising tide together to continue this conversation, seek action more broadly, that we do not let this moment recede to another memory until the next low tide. So I want to again thank both of you for addressing this. I think it's been an opportunity and will continue to be an opportunity to understand how our police department does things right, and to use it as an opportunity to uncover blind spots. And we are very fortunate in Carlisle to have a police chief and officers ready to stand up to that challenge. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well said. Next, Councilor Deb Fulham-Winston.
Was there something in particular? I had not asked to speak.
Okay. Sorry, Deb, can you repeat that?
I had not asked to speak, so I wasn't sure.
No, we're just doing round robin. If you don't have any comments, you don't have to say anything.
Oh, well, the one comment I would make is that we all need to be learning at all times, much as Sean was saying before. We are creatures of the culture that raised us, but it doesn't mean we have to stay there. We can learn. We can appreciate everything about our neighbors and our neighboring countries and take that on board and make sure that we are behaving well at all times and making sure that we are respecting the rights of everyone in our community, no matter how big or a small person they are. They need to be recognized as valued members of our community. And we need to work at that all the time, because if we stop learning, we stagnate, and that's not good for anybody.
Thank you, Deb. Sean Cramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Sergeant Friedman, Sergeant Miller. I think, you know, that presentation was a great example of how lucky the Carlisle community is to have a force that is following these procedures, following guidelines, following training, staying up to date on training. I think that is super important. You also mentioned recruitment and how important that is. And I'll just throw out, I know you both mentioned we work with colleges and universities. I would love to see, and maybe you already are working with them, but Cheney University and Lincoln University, the two oldest HBCUs in the country, both have criminal justice majors. I'd love to see if we could create a partnership with both of those universities to help, help create a stronger police force. The other thing I wanted to mention, I think this presentation showed that we have a great process in place. We have great training mechanisms, and it looks like by all accounts we are doing the right thing. The one weak spot, I think that I would like for council to explore, if you go on the website and look to file a complaint against an officer, you can send that to the police chief, or you can show up at the police station. I think if we can make it more public that the borough manager's office can also receive those complaints. My fear is a person from a community of color or a person who might be fearful to go into the police station but doesn't want to submit an anonymous complaint is kind of shut out of that process right now. The other thing I would like to add, I know the chief, and we have a great chief and we have great leadership, works with the borough manager. Council gets updated from time to time on in executive session on certain issues that arise. But if we can also create some kind of internal process so we don't have what happens in other communities where things come out, things happen, and we realize, oh, that was a bad apple who had 12 complaints against them, right? I think the policing community is a community that can't afford to have bad apples. So I don't want us to be in that position. God forbid if that were ever to happen in our community and folks come to us and say, you know, this officer had 15 violations against them. How did you not know? So that's another issue that I think can help strengthen the paths that we're going down. And then lastly, I'll just finish piggybacking on what Sean Schultz said. I want to challenge us as a council to get uncomfortable and to start pushing back against mainly racist policies that are in Harrisburg, whether it be housing, wages, or criminal justice. I think we can be advocates. There may be things we can't do at the local level, but I think we need to speak out and make sure that we're helping be part of the change instead of, just having this meeting and ending everything tonight. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Brenda Landis.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, thank you so much to Lieutenant Sergeant, Chief. I have been on council for 2.5 years, and I submitted a bunch of questions, and I know what that email looks like, and I don't want it to, I don't know, it's hard to ask. So, Sean just said, make us feel uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable sending that email with all those questions, but it's because 2.5 years ago, I wouldn't have known to ask any of those questions, and you covered so many of them, and now our new counselors are educated, and our population are educated. They can ask more, or better educated, articulate questions when it comes to their interactions or their questions about the policing. We are seeing so many things coming across the screens right now, and it's hard to know what exactly it is when the average citizen probably doesn't interact with the police all that often. So I know what it looked like, and I appreciate you, listening to our residents who are asking questions and also addressing a lot of the ones that I had submitted. You did it very well, and now we can use all of the work that you have already done and put it up. I know we're going to put up a site or a page that gives a lot of these frequently asked questions. So I truly appreciate that. And the other thing that I'd like to say is, first of all, this pandemic has been weirdly wonderful for our borough government, and because there are so many people that are watching this, and we usually don't have 62 people in the room and then another 22 as panelists. So we have more people listening and more people understanding and more people getting educated about this right now. But we've had these meetings. I mean, you've come in and you've talked about your training with FBI. I think it was, I forget what the actual special training was, but the general training that we've talked about the recruitment changes. We've talked, these things have been presented to us, body cams, the changes in the civil service, having our civilians participate in that in the hiring process. So it's not that the police don't come in and present this to council. It's just a lot of times the folks in the community don't get to hear it. So I think it's really wonderful that tonight you're able to kind of just, I mean, I know it was a lot. I know it was an hour of presenting, but it was a comprehensive overview that everyone, I think, should feel more reassured, should feel more comfortable figuring out that they could come to the station, come to borough manager, come to, and if that's not it, come to one of us. We as counselors, we can, facilitate those conversations. We're all trying to be as transparent as possible. I know that there's legal things. And to go to Sean Crampsey's point, yes, I mean, feel uncomfortable, and we can talk to our representatives and say, these are the extra things that are burdening our local area, and we don't have the power to make any changes. So we collectively as council can advocate for additional things. And I think that sometimes I don't know what I don't know, so I rely on everyone else to tell me, like, all right, this is something that's important, and that we have the power and we have the voice to advocate for. So the public can tell us too, like, did you know that this is happening? Have you considered it? Those are types of things we're looking for. So I greatly, greatly appreciate your time. I thank you all, and I hope that the public learned as much as I did, because there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't know too. So thank you by my heart.
And before I recognize Councilor Stubbe, I just want to reemphasize that this presentation is going to be online and on our social media sites. And also staff is working on a Q&A, frequently asked questions. So if your question did not get answered or you had to leave, we will be trying to answer those frequently asked questions to the best of our ability. So look for that very soon. And now, last but not least, Councilor Jeff Stubbe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I really have anything to add that hasn't already been said. So I'll just say thank you for the presentation, and thank you for those in attendance who are willing to engage and ask the council and the police department difficult questions and continue to push us forward on this issue.
All right, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor just reminded me that we did get some questions on Facebook about My Brother's Keeper. And that was an initiative that I brought forward back in 2014, the goal of which was to improve the outcomes for young men and women of color. We convened a special meeting with a lot of community stakeholders, and I think even some of the people on this call were in that room. And we did a report that outlined the actions that we were going to take. Fortunately, this initiative that came from the Obama administration didn't come with any funding. But it does not mean that we can't revisit that and try and figure out a way to bring that back to life. So that's a very good suggestion, and I'm going to ask staff to dust off that report and let's see what we can find to try to re-energize some of that information. I am also calling on everyone in the borough, businesses, citizens, to observe a day of mourning, National Day of Mourning, tomorrow, Thursday at noon, for silent prayer and reflection as we contemplate the violence raging in our nation and also call for racial reconciliation. So please do that as you are able. And now we'll recognize any questions from the audience. If anyone has any thoughts they'd like to share, our PIO will unmute your mic. Okay. Okay, and if you please state your name and address because this is being recorded for the record.
Is that me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Tawanda Stallworth, Lower Swatara Township, Pennsylvania. I certainly appreciate the presentation tonight, and thank you for the opportunity, Mayor Scott, Deputy Mayor Schultz, members of council. I'm certainly for those that know me and know that I've been around this scene for a bit, know that my sentiments are probably not anything that you haven't heard before. If you can hear anything in the background, I'm actually the Zoom administrator for my church, and they're having a service of prayer and lament in the background right now. So there's some spiritual singing and some things happening that may come across my mic, so I apologize for that. I just want to say, I want to stress again the importance of doing this work when you don't have an issue, when you don't have something going on. And as many policies as we try to put in place, as many trainings as we try to put in place, the reality of it is we live in a country that was built on white supremacist ideation and values. It's how we got here. It's what often sustains many of our institutions and systems that we hold so dear. I really feel lightened by some of the comments that I've heard here tonight, especially those of Deputy Mayor Schultz, because it matters, right? It doesn't matter how many policies we put into place. I mean, Minneapolis, I'm sure, had policies in place. I'm sure they had trainings in place. I'm sure they have accreditations. I'm sure they have all of that. But when it comes down to split-second decisions and things that need to be decided in the matter of seconds, what rises up is what's already ingrained in you. So as we have psychological testing and as we have all of these different things that are part of the sort of onboarding or things that happen as a part of the training, we really need to examine those things for their inherent cultural biases inside of the questions. And maybe that's already happening. But at this point in our country, 401 years later of enduring some of the same systems and the same things that have risen up time and time again, it's time to look a little deeper and a little further. So let's look at our microaggressions and look at our macroaggressions and look at the things that we may not necessarily even know that are there. Let's look at our privilege. Let's look at the ways in which we benefit from systems that put their knees into the necks of other people. I got an email today. It's really short. I just want to share it. Last week, I had my executive director and I had a meeting with a president and CEO of a local business. And the premise of that meeting was determining how we could get some of our kids from the Camp Curtin YMCA some career exposure. And we took that meeting and it was a good meeting and we learned a lot. And we left that meeting and we felt like it was a positive meeting. I got an email from him today and it just says, wow. Our meeting last week was timely. While I know I can never fully understand / empathize / appreciate the disparity caused by white privilege, the one thing I can do is work with you to get your kids into good careers. It's a small thing, but it's something I can influence. Now more than ever, I really want to make this happen. Let me know what we can do to help. I wish you the both very best. I would encourage us all to know that there's something that you can do. It may not sound like a lot. You may not think it's a great deal, but each of us have our own circles of influence and something small may mean very much to someone else. So let's look at those things. Let's take active steps. Let's sign up for some racial training. Let's sign up. Let's figure out where our biases lie. Let's look, let's actively search them out and not wait for them to be harmful to someone else. Let's do the work. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawanda. Stephanie, are there any other folks interested in making a comment on the Zoom? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much again, Sergeant Miller and Detective Sergeant Friedman. We appreciate your time and your effort, and we stand with you throughout this process and beyond. So thank you very much. Oh, absolutely.
First off, I just want to thank everybody for allowing us to speak here today. The community outpouring that we had for Corporal Groller's death and the parade and everybody that came out when this was all in the midst of this going on. And to me, it was heartbreaking to think that our community was viewing us as the national media and the other local cities were putting out the disdain and the disbelief that police could act this way. The second that came out, it's wrong, it's absolutely improper, it's illegal. We don't stand for that type of thing. And we wanted our community to know we take steps to make sure that this does not happen. To know that the community could come out like they did for Tim and for his family, and then have people believe that on the same side that we could even think about being that way is truly heartbreaking. And that's why we're here, to make sure that everybody understands that is not us. That is not how this police department works. It has not. I've dedicated 23 years of my life to this place. I've been treated fairly and well, and I treat people fairly and well, and everybody I work with does also. And that's why we're here, is just to make sure that everybody understands that each police department is different. And I believe from the comments that we have and the people that have talked, and I've known Tawanda for a very long time, I think we obviously are open to change and doing things better. And if we are doing things wrong, we will certainly do that to the best of our abilities and continue to grow and learn. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody for listening to us. And once the COVID thing is over, we certainly invite anybody to do a ride along, to come in and see us and watch how we do our job and the business of policing. Again, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, now moving on to item 5, Mayor's Report. The month of June is recognized worldwide as LGBTQ Pride Month to commemorate the 1969 Stonewall riots in New York City, considered to be the turning point in the fight for global LGBTQ equality. So therefore, as mayor, I declare the week of June 13th, 2020 as LGBT Pride Week, and the month of June 2020 as LGBTQ Pride Month in the Borough of Carlisle. I encourage all residents to join in the fight to promote equality and a culture of anti-discrimination in Carlisle Borough and the Carlisle region, because as our friend Chris Kapp said, we must stand together with those who are protesting now, because pride can't matter until Black Lives Matter. Thank you very much. Now, COVID-19 update. We have several items here which council and staff have vetted that we think will be essential as the beginning to help our businesses in the downtown recover. Therefore, I move that council ratify the following COVID-19 economic recovery effort measures designed to assist the Borough of Carlisle small business community. 1, temporarily suspend the borough sidewalk ordinance to allow within the C1 district the following provisions: waiving the permit fee, allowing use of adjacent sidewalk areas if granted approval by property owners, providing for a 15-day extension until close of business on June 19th, 2020 for the submission of the appropriate application, accompanied sketch, and required certificate of a liability insurance form, and practicing the associated COVID-19 precautionary measures outlined by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. 2, endorse the temporary modification of the Carlisle Borough Park Use Agreement, permitting small business to utilize the borough's parks for conducting business activities and practicing the associated COVID-19 precautionary measures. And 3, allow the continuance of parking moratoriums and provisions in downtown Carlisle to include free downtown metered parking, free use of the Pomfret Street parking garage and metered spaces at borough lots, and furthermore, to allow downtown curbside bagged parking meter provisions for businesses offering curbside service. Parking supply and demand will be modified and monitored as deemed appropriate. I so move. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded by Deputy Mayor Schultz. Any discussion among council?
I have one question, Mayor.
Sure.
Regarding the first, just the first item, and it's just a bit of a technicality. We said granted approval by property owners. Would it make sense to say both property and business owners, since those are not necessarily the same?
Thank you for that, Joel. Yes, we absolutely can. We can certainly amend that. And so my question, Deputy Mayor Schultz, is do you still second the amended motion?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. We just have to, these procedures we have to do. So thank you, Joel. Any other comments from council? Any
Think it's a
comments
great
from
first
staff?
step.
Mayor.
Yes, Deputy Borough Manager Armstrong.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I would just like to add that, again, I think these are the first steps that we're going to phase in. We'll continue to explore options, and we continue to receive input from the small business community and encourage more of that, please. We're receiving information from the Downtown Carlisle Association. Stephanie Gilbert and Destination Carlisle have also provided us feedback today. Staff's going to take a close look at that. But again, I think we're going to rely heavily upon the small businesses to tell us what's working, what isn't working. Here again, nothing's in stone. So this is a very fluid process, and one that I believe Borough Council and of course your manager and the staff here are welcoming to put together creative strategies for hopefully to accelerate recovery for our downtown businesses. So these the three items that were acted upon tonight. They become effective immediately, and any questions on those, please feel free to reach out to either me or my staff, and we'll gladly try to assist. Otherwise, again, we welcome continued dialogue. And I believe, again, that this was the first in a series of public meetings that Borough Council wanted to hold on the recovery strategies last Friday, and we were able to glean this from some of the feedback. But we have yet to schedule the second meeting. I believe that's going to be scheduled soon after we're able to coordinate calendars, and we are currently fleshing out the final details with respect to the CARES stimulus dollars for the economic recovery, and that information will be shared in the near future with the businesses.
All right. Thank you very much.
I had one quick question.
We have a motion. Actually, we have an amended motion
Sean's
and a proper second. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just had a quick question to follow up on the motion.
Okay, Sean Cramsey, then Brenda.
Yep. Mrs. Manager, question on the parking, and it says in the motion that it'll be reevaluated. I see there's a question here, and I know it came up at our larger meeting with employees sitting on parking spots and spots not, being used to the best of their ability for our businesses. Do you envision that being reevaluated on a weekly basis?
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Brenda Landis.
I was just trying to tell you Sean was asking a question.
Oh, thank you. See, I love how we help each other out here. All right, Deputy Mayor.
Just to note that these actions can be tweaked very rapidly. We have a legal opinion from the solicitor that under the emergency declarations, these recovery actions can be seen as actions that can be amended on the fly by the borough manager, and the borough manager staying in consultation with council. And then as needed, we can ratify as council any actions later if necessary.
Right. So to reinforce Deputy Mayor's point, that we don't have to wait till there's a public meeting to take some of these actions under the emergency declaration. So that's good. Thank you for sharing that, Sean. Okay. Unless there are any other questions, and before the storm gets too terrible, I will go ahead and call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And now, community planning and smart growth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to throw it to Councilor Hicks.
Thank you. Thank you all for indulging a few minutes to follow up on our climate change resolution that we made last month. I apologize. The hail is now slamming against my windows here, so I'll try to yell over it. With the opportunity to put a straw man together of a climate action committee that was part of the resolution that I know a few of you had a chance to look at, but what
Oh, he froze. Joel, you froze. Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, Deputy Mayor, would you like to? Oh, wow. Yeah, we're having, Councilor Hicks is having technical difficulties. So I think what we'll do is, yeah, we'll come back to that one. This one will be over, and as they say in the legislature. So now let's go to Public Works.
It looks like maybe Deb also lost the connection. So I could do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
please proceed. Floor is yours.
Unless, hold on a second. Let's pull it up here. Give me one moment.
Okay. Oh my God, we're losing
Yeah.
everybody. Oh, wow. You know what? I'll go ahead and make this motion. How about we just do that?
I found it. I found
Oh,
it.
you did? Okay.
I had a bunch of tabs up. Just took me just an extra second. Sorry about that. Okay, so I make the motion that Borough Council award the unit price construction contract for the 2020 pedestrian curb ramp rehabilitation project to the lowest responsive bidder, Doug Lamb Construction Incorporated of Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, in the amount of $315,845. Borough Council may authorize any contract change orders needing prompt action in an amount not to exceed $4,000 each, to be approved at the discretion of the borough manager and brought before council for retroactive approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Motion has been properly seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. And for the record, we still have a quorum, so we can still do business. All right. Item B.
Okay, I make the motion that Borough Council award the unit price construction contract for the decorative crosswalk replacement project to the lowest responsive bidder, Dynamic Surface Applications Limited of Pennsdale, Pennsylvania, in the amount of $45,440. Borough Council may also authorize any contract change orders needing prompt action in an amount not to exceed $4,000 each, to be approved at the discretion of the borough manager and brought before council for retroactive approval.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. And I think that ends that report.
Yeah.
And just one other question that we had about enforcement of the governor's guidelines. Carlisle Borough, we do our part. The way this works is someone will notify the police. Police will send an officer over to give a warning and share information. And they will come back in 48 hours. And if the business is still not in compliance, a report is generated and that gets up-channeled to the district attorney, the elected district attorney, Skip Ebert. District attorneys have prosecutorial discretion. Once that happens, it's out of our hands. Further action may be taken by a state agency, but we are generally not privy to that. So for our part, we do what we're supposed to do. And once it leaves us and is in the hands of another elected official or state agency, then we don't have anything more to do with that. So I hope that answers the question. If it wasn't clear, please email myself or the borough manager, and we'll make sure that we clarify anything. So that being said, I understand Councilor Hicks's power is out and CenturyLink is out. So we're dropping like flies. So unless there's anything else before the body, I will, Mr. Crampsey.
I think Chris Kapp had something in the public comment, if she is still on.
Okay.
I think that was Tim's question that he answered. I think that was Chris's question that Tim answered. Sorry.
Okay.
Hi,
Chris,
I'm
you're
here.
unmuted. So if we didn't answer your question, go ahead.
I was actually just hoping to say thank you on behalf of Carlisle Pride Week for passing the resolution and declaring Pride Week, and for standing up consistently and thoroughly for marginalized people in Carlisle, both in our community and outside our community. And I just wanted to take a minute to remind people that our histories and our movement's major sea change came at the Stonewall riots, which were started by trans women of color. And we stand in gratitude. We owe them our support. They are our history, and we need to know our history, because pride, like you quoted me earlier when you said, pride can't matter until Black lives matter. Because our history, our foundation, are trans women of color. And how dare we turn our backs on people who are trying to change their history when they helped us change ours. Activism is intersectional, and we have to stand up for each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, there being no further business before this body, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you.